Hello, hello. How's everybody?
Good, good. If you saw us nodding, it's because we were with Cassy at another window, making sure.
I'm going to share my screen here so everybody can see. But maybe we'll give people a couple minutes to join. We had over 100 people register for this event, so I know it's going to be popular. We'll have a lot of people joining.
All
Maybe
good.
we'll give people
They can
a
get the
couple.
recording too.
That's true. So we're going to record this. So if anyone is thinking about taking notes, you can take notes. But if you don't feel like it, yeah, we're going to send you everything after. So, but yeah, we can get started. It's going to be 30 minutes, and we're going to go over how we can build a LinkedIn brand that actually wins without AI slop. I got Hillary and Manuela here, two amazing people who have a ton of experience doing this for their own accounts, for founders, for go-to-market leaders, and for the companies that they work with. And they've told me that they're going to share everything that they know. They're not holding back, and you're going to learn a lot of the about the things that they do. But first, I think just prefacing this with how powerful LinkedIn content can be, but the fact that it's invisible, and a couple points that we wanted to make before getting into it here. So, number one, when we were thinking about building a brand that actually wins on LinkedIn without the AI slop, we know that posting does not equal pipeline necessarily. It's a long game. We always talk about this. I think we were talking about this before, was when you're creating content, it's like going to the gym. You're not going to see results immediately overnight necessarily. But in the long term, you know that it's good for you. And, when you see those results, it's all worth it. Number two, AI content is easier, but also it's made LinkedIn worse and harder to navigate. And you probably see this yourself, right? Looking at your news feed. And LinkedIn has actually updated the algorithm in the last year. So that now you're seeing less content from people who are first and second degree connections and more from people who are actually creating content in your space. So you've probably heard a lot of people say, "Hey, why is my engagement down?" Or you've wondered that before yourself. And this is because LinkedIn is trying to figure out what to do. What can they do? Just like any social media platform. And then the last thing is turning attention into conversations. So I think Hillary and Manuela have both thought about this a lot. Is how do we turn attention into actual leads and sales for customers? How do we actually turn this into results? And this is something that we've talked about a lot at Postbeam as well. Um, but yeah, I think, first thing is like we want to focus on here because when you think about it, and how LinkedIn is trying to combat AI slop and how to stay with the times in making LinkedIn a great place to consume content and how to get people to spend more time there. Things are changing, and so we're going to focus on what works in 2026. And some of the things we're going to talk about is consistency over virality, systems over just posting because you're motivated, starting conversations and not just focusing on impressions, which can be a vanity metric, and then POV over generic content. So again, LinkedIn and other platforms are thinking about who owns this niche now. And we saw it on Twitter or on X over the last couple of years, how they've changed their algorithm to now reward people who are in very specific niches, and especially with more content. LinkedIn wants to know about people's real lived first person experience. And that's what performs better than generic content these days, especially if you're more focused on actually creating opportunities than just impressions. So, without further ado, we've got two amazing guests here. We've got Hillary. Hillary is a veteran of SaaS copywriting and a brand strategist with over 15 years of experience. More recently, Hillary founded Syntropy, an AI native, human first marketing agency that builds adaptive content systems for lean B2B teams in Notion. And Hillary is going to share some of the stuff that she's done in Notion, but it's amazing. I think Hillary is probably one of the most experienced Notion users I've ever met. And it's amazing what she's done in using it as a way to create content systems. And Hillary also helps founders and marketers turn knowledge, tribal knowledge, and scattered context into a repeatable engine for clear strategy that's always on brand content and actually generates measurable pipeline. And we've got Manuela. So Manuela is the head of marketing at Fellow, and Fellow is a software company building the privacy and security first AI agent for meetings. And as Fellow's first marketing hire, Manuela has actually spent 8 years building the company's content, brand, and product marketing programs from the ground up. And I think Manuela has seen the company more than 10x since her time there, and go through a couple of different little pivots over time. And so Manuela has a ton of experience there. And I'm actually a fellow user myself. And so, I can tell you firsthand their marketing works. So thanks again for joining us, Hillary and Manuela, and
You,
spending
Cassy.
some time with us.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here.
So I want to open it up, and I want this is going to be more of a conversation. So just the first question I think that would be interesting to hear from you two is, how are you producing content consistently right now?
Well, I can jump in and start. I am a super organized person. It's one of my character strengths, I'd say, but I've learned the hard way that consistency isn't about willpower, it's about systems. I need to build systems that allow me to do my best work even on my worst days, because we always have them. So for me, that translates to defining clear content pillars, topics that your audience is actually interested in and that you can write authoritatively about, developing a good content cadence, so you're varying those pillars and topics. And then developing a content system, at Syntropy, we call it our AI content engine, to regularly draft and deploy in alignment with your brand strategy, your brand voice, but also that content strategy you've laid out. You know, even very diligent content writers can't hold all of your competing brand priorities and messaging and ICP pain points in their head at any given time. And you probably don't want them to go back and read every single brand resource that you've ever created in order to draft a simple post. So I've encoded a lot of the decisions that we've already made about brand voice and content strategy into an AI system that I can call on to produce reliably on brand first drafts. And then that frees up my human team to do a lot more polish and dig deeper, be more creative, try new things. But codifying that system first has been the biggest shift. It just frees up so much of our cognitive bandwidth to do the more creative work.
I fully agree with you, Hillary. For me, Cassie, it's been about starting with those pillars that I think Hillary talked about. I also like to call them pillars. I speak, I'm going to speak about my personal LinkedIn and my personal brand more here because it's what I've been working on over the last 8 years. But I think it's extremely important to choose those 2 or 3 things that you want to be known for. And like you were saying, Cassie, it's not just for your audience and your community, but it's even for the algorithms. Like when the algorithms know that you focus on 1 or 2 things, I think they're more likely to show your content when you write about those things. So highly encourage people here, as Hillary was saying, because it's the same thing I've been doing, to choose what are those 2 or 3 things that they want to be known for and try to stick to that lane. So one thing that I did to kind of keep myself accountable to stick to those things is even write your LinkedIn headline or your LinkedIn bio, stating what are those things that you write about. I think that helps you stay focused and stay accountable to, oh, these are the things that I want to be known for. So you mentioned a pivot, Cassie, like Fellow pivoted from being a manager's co-pilot to being an AI meeting assistant about 2 years ago. So when we were a manager's co-pilot, I liked to write on LinkedIn about management, leadership, meeting workflows for managers and their teams, one-on-one meetings. So I very clearly stated that in my bio, like, hey, follow me if you want to learn about what I've learned in the process of becoming a manager at a high growth company, for example. But after Fellow pivoted into the AI space, I decided, okay, I feel like me, a lot of people might be feeling overwhelmed or confused about how to use AI, how AI is shaping our work lives. So I decided to change one of those pillars from management and leadership to AI workflows, how I'm using AI tools. And that's why in my headline on LinkedIn, I say, sharing reflections on how AI is reshaping work. So hopefully, like when people look at my LinkedIn profile, they think, okay, I'll follow this person because they talk about this one thing that I want to learn more about. So just wanted to add my 2 cents on that, Hillary, that you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, Manuela, too, if you run into the challenge. I find um, a lot of people feel when clients are first reviewing a batch of content I've produced around those pillars, the pushback is, oh, this seems repetitive. We already said this in a previous post. And I'm like, exactly. That's the point. You need to be repetitive. It can sound like you're saying the same thing over and over again. And that's where I distinguish between like repetition and redundancy. It's good to repeat something to reinforce the message, to find slightly different ways of packaging that message so it appeals to different people or just clicks for different people. But it's easy to fall into the trap of redundancy, right? If you're not lending fresh perspective or nuance, it can sound too repetitive and bore people. But I find that pushback when people are trying LinkedIn for the first time, they feel like they're saying the same thing too much without realizing that only 1% of their audience is even going to see that post.
That's an interesting concept. Like I think about like SEO too a lot. Like we our main channel for the business that I had built before Postbeam was SEO. And we always talked about information gain and how do we create content that's fresh and has new perspectives. So I mean, maybe this goes into the next topic, but how do you avoid sounding like everyone else in a world where there's just so much content? Does it even matter that that you might sound like other people?
Joe Laser has a term for what he calls the AI vortex of mid, which I think is slightly different but related to this challenge, where if everyone's using the same LLMs to produce the same kind of content in the same verticals for the same platforms, you're going to sound really samey. And I find, especially in B2B, people are tend to be afraid to lean into their idiosyncrasies, their points of difference, but that is your advantage, especially in the age of AI, because if all of your competitors are using GPT to write about the same kind of topics, yeah, it's going to come out with the same sort of corporate mumbo jumbo that GPT is inclined to. But if you have a particular way of describing something or a unique point of view, that is your greatest advantage in the age of AI. If you can scale that and connect that to some real business outcome or value, that's going to be your competitive advantage. I can speak a little bit to how I do that, but I'm curious to hear from you, Manuela, as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about it from a personal brand perspective and from a company brand perspective. So, things that I do to avoid sounding like everyone else, I think choosing one of those pillars to be something that makes you you. That is like a first step that I would recommend. So, in my case, one of my pillars is talking about the fact that I am an immigrant and that I am Latina and that I sometimes feel like I'm a minority in a tech environment. And that is something that I think makes me different and it's something that I've embraced in my LinkedIn content. So it's one of my pillars and I try to embrace that whenever I can without like pushing it too much. But I think choosing like one of those things that makes you you and like making sure that your content shows that. From a company perspective, I was thinking about how we are doing it at Fellow, and that is using more of our customer words. So instead of coming up with our own copy, instead of coming up with our own content ideas for LinkedIn, for example, we're listening more and more to sales calls, to customer success calls, and using AI to help generate ideas on why people are specifically coming to Fellow instead of other AI note takers, for example. And I think just listening to our customers and using their own words is helping us avoid sounding like other brands on LinkedIn. So wanted to touch on that on both like the personal brand perspective, like do and post about things that make you you. And also from a brand perspective, I think it's important to use your customer words, and they will make you sound unique as well.
Yeah.
That's actually interesting. Like we do something now, well, with Fellow actually, where I take my sales calls, I put them into Claude, and then I take them from Claude, I turn them into posts, and then I put them into Postbeam and schedule them. And they give us really unique perspectives from our sales calls, um, talking to customers and just from the customer voice.
Yeah, and it goes for content on your website. Even I know this webinar is about LinkedIn, but people
Mhm.
nowadays are talking about how can you make your content different because everything out there is written by AI. One of the
Mhm.
things that I'm really advocating for is using customer language in your blog posts, using customer language in
Mhm.
your LinkedIn posts, because that is content that you won't find anywhere else. It basically belongs to you because you're extracting that language from the sales calls, right? So
Mhm.
Taylor, I know you said you wanted to touch on how you do this.
Sure. So from a brand strategy perspective, I'm very brand first in my approach to marketing. I sit down with a client, a founder, and ask them before they touch GPT or run a deep research or anything to describe in their own words what their business is about, what they care about, what their services are, who their customers are. I want to document that as much as possible in their own words before we bring in AI to help us strategize or scale. But beyond that, AI can be a great tool for, especially if you have a lot of published content or customer interviews or, and I mean company published content such as blogs, or as a founder, I have one founder who has a photography blog, and I use that as a source to find examples of his idiosyncratic ways of writing or the idioms that he leans on. So AI to analyze vast amounts of data and detect those kinds of patterns can be a great starting point for your voice and tone guidelines. Um, that said, I do still schedule regular monthly, if not weekly, meetings with all of my clients because that original point of view really, really matters. If you've used AI to generate LinkedIn posts or any social posts, really, you know that if you don't give it a strong, compelling, like thesis statement or central idea, it'll spit out something that's fine, but not really memorable. It's kind of like corporate speak, where it's a lot of words, but you can't quite tell if they mean anything. Um, if now is a good time, I can briefly sort of show my Notion setup, Cassie.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. That was one thing I wanted people to see. So I think that'd be awesome.
Let me just show here. So, get out of this.
I'm learning too, by the way, so I'm curious to see it.
So I talked about voice samples, original samples wherever possible. I do have, lengthy discovery processes, questionnaires that I send to my clients, but they're all busy founders like myself, so they often don't complete those. So we will compile those. I'll use AI to query, Gmail, Slack, especially where I know those founders are using their own words, not leaning on GPT to respond to me in the moment. So I query AI and have it analyze their communications and come back with voice and tone guidelines. Here I've developed some of my own, or sorry, this isn't the fully fleshed out doc, but I actually have all these pages repopulate monthly. I scrape new insights from our past content, from Notion's interpretation of our analytics, and retune our social strategy every month before I go into creating content. So these are just some of the assets I've compiled. I can show as well. Uh,
We actually can't see your screen.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I'm seeing your screen. That's
Oh, you
weird.
can?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you know what?
is it
I
on the
think
second tab?
okay,
Does
there we
that
go.
Oh
sometimes?
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
second tab
Yeah.
for anyone
Good now
else on
though.
the call.
You got it now, Cassie?
Yeah, I can't see it on mine, but I think you can
Okay.
see it right now. I think it's just me.
How about in the chat? Can you guys see my screen?
Okay, all
Okay,
good.
cool.
Yeah.
Good. So yes, this is an example of our source of truth for my LinkedIn content. We have various pages here, including our brand messaging framework, content pillars like we discussed. When I'm actually ready to write that content, I come to this content engine. Effectively, we wanted to replicate a OpenClaw style agentic workflow, but I'm too much of a control freak to hand over the reins to AI. So I like to be able to manually prompt and review the outputs at each step. Each one of these is what I call a toolmate, effectively a bot trained in a specific workflow, specific process, my brand voice and preferences and audience and what have you. But each of these pages is just a very robust prompt based on our years of experiments and best practices. So it's got all the info it needs here to start its research before it begins drafting my LinkedIn posts. And then when I'm ready to actually prompt it, I just come in here and say start step one, research. To clarify, Notion is pretty handy because you can tag like any agent or page or resource you want it to reference. But since I'm just on this page, I can do that. It's not going to produce a full set of content in the time that we have left, but it effectively, this research agent does its job, packages its findings, sends it off to the next step, which would be this strategy lock here. And yeah, the end result is not perfect, not anything that I'd publish right out the gate, but it's on brand. It's in alignment with my current quarterly or monthly priorities. It's targeting the specific ICPs we've identified, and it gives a really detailed breakdown of the steps it took, why it made the choices it did. So there's a lot of transparency into how the AI is making that decisions, and we can weigh in to fine tune as we go.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
It looks really awesome.
thank you.
Cassie, would you like me to share my style guide? I can share my
Yeah,
screen
yeah,
since we're on
that'd be
screen
great.
sharing mode right now. Not as visually exciting as Hillary's Notion. I'm gonna steal some ideas from there. But this is another idea for people in the audience. You can always use a tool like Claude to create a style guide based on what you would consider to be your most successful LinkedIn posts or the LinkedIn posts that mostly represent you. So I selected a few LinkedIn posts, used Claude to create a voice and tone style guide, similar to what Hillary was recommending, always start with a style guide. And I also gave the LLM my pillars, right? Like the content pillars that I want to be known for. You can prompt it so it creates an MD file like this one for you with like specific things that you want it to include, like content themes. Like I told you guys, I'm sharing like my real stuff. So immigrant experience, startup journey, personal milestones, gratitude, AI and tech transformation. Like these are all things that I want to be known for. So you can give that to Claude as an MD file. I basically created a project here. And the one thing that I wanted to share, besides, I'm just going to extend my screen here. You can see it on the right, I guess, as a file in the project. The other thing that I wanted to share was this concept of recording myself whenever the idea comes to mind. I think I was telling this to Cassy one day. I have this habit, I think, of whenever I have an idea for a LinkedIn post, I immediately record myself saying it out loud in Claude inside of that project. And I think it's a habit other people could adopt as well. Like if you're on a walk, if you're cooking, if you're on a date and you have a post idea, just like record yourself and give it to Claude. And maybe if you already have a system like Hillary's or a system like mine, a Claude project, just dump the idea there and you can schedule it with something like Postbeam after.
I love that. You definitely have to capture it when creativity strikes. I use Notion now has a Notion AI app. So I can just open it and dictate, hey, find this database, add this to my list of post ideas for next month, and boom, it's there. So handy.
Really cool. Amazing systems, both of you. The interesting thing I find is like the concept of the pillars is still a key part of it, right? If you're both kind of using pillars as a core part of creating content, which is really smart.
Yeah.
So just last question here. We talked about this before, like attribution is not perfect. And maybe Manuela, if you want to start on this, like, you were telling me because you're directly responsible for marketing at Fellow, how do you track, whether content actually turns into leads and sales, or can you even track it?
Yeah. At Fellow, we don't have very strict metrics or targets in terms of our LinkedIn content or our LinkedIn personal brands should be creating or generating this many leads every month. Like we're not there yet with LinkedIn as a channel, but we do see a lot of qualitative feedback and anecdotes based on what we hear on sales calls. For example, when our sales team asks, "How do you hear about Fellow?" We have this really cool automation with Zapier where Zapier grabs the transcript from Fellow and sends it to a Slack channel, allowing us to see what people say during those discovery calls. And people say, "I see your founder's content on LinkedIn," for example. Another anecdote that we have very recently is we hosted a webinar with Zapier. It was like a workshop on how to use Fellow and Zapier to automate some of these workflows. And I posted about it from a personal experience. I posted like, "Hey, a lot of people ask me how I'm using AI tools to automate my workflow. Well, I actually feel like this webinar will be relevant to people following me and people that I know." And we saw a lot of registrations through my LinkedIn account because it was a webinar that related to, let's say, like the marketing persona or the type of people I tend to connect with on LinkedIn. So we have those anecdotes, Cassy. Like it's not like we're tracking specifically how many leads per month come in through these channels, but we know it has an impact. We know. I was also chatting today with someone at Fellow who was telling me we know it's a channel we can use if we need to ask our Fellow ambassadors, for example, for a favor to post about a new feature update. Why? Because I'm always interacting with their content on LinkedIn. So I know this answer might sound all over the place, but where I'm going here is that I feel like LinkedIn sometimes is also about what you put into it. So if you're interacting with your prospects' content, if you're, for example, at Fellow, we have ambassadors, so people who post about Fellow, who create content about Fellow. I'm always interacting with their LinkedIn content. I'm always liking, commenting on their posts, they're commenting on mine. And I feel like by having that relationship build over time and also them seeing my content over time, it creates this layer of trust where if we have to ask them to post about Fellow, if we have to ask them to participate in a campaign, it's almost like they feel like we're always in touch. We're always chatting just because they are always seeing my LinkedIn content and I'm always interacting with their LinkedIn content. So we see a lot of benefits from it, from like event attendance to relationships with ambassadors and influencers, to even being invited to events like this one, right? Like which put Fellow as a brand in the eyes of new people, of prospects and potential customers. So I think that Fellow has been super supportive about that. Like Aiden, our CEO, I think from the beginning has really empowered me to do this. And I think we've seen the results and the impact on our brand.
Nice. Amazing answer. Yeah, I mean, I see Fellow everywhere on LinkedIn, so something's working.
Maybe the algorithm is just showing us each other's posts.
Yeah. Hillary, is there anything you do for the clients that you work with to turn content into leads and sales, or does that ever come up?
I'll say I've done a lot of sales enablement support for my early stage startups, and all the content that I produce is with that in mind. I feel like there's a misconception that, or at least a different content philosophy, where we just need to publish as much as possible until one post goes viral. Sure, that's one way of doing it, but I think of it as every piece of content is part of a larger ecosystem, contributes to a greater whole in educating and advancing your prospects down that funnel to a decision. So the three tactics that I've found work really well in embedding in your content strategy or keeping in mind whenever you're producing posts is that you have to lead with value. Nobody's going to care if they don't know how it benefits or relates to them in some way. You have to earn trust. You have to offer enough social proof, like quantitative metrics, qualitative testimonials, case studies, whatever you have. You need to bolster your content with proof. People aren't just going to believe you can do it because you say you can. And third, there always needs to be a clear next step, whether it's implicit or explicit. I don't think that every LinkedIn post should have a CTA, but you should be thinking about what is this concept, this question going to prompt them to do next? What is going on in the customer's mind, not just in your content pipeline? And then we touched on it a bit throughout. Manuela, you mentioned it in your response as well. Posting is only half the battle, not even half the battle. Engagement is a much more important part these days. And I understand a lot of my clients don't have time to do that. I wish that I had more time to browse LinkedIn and engage. But actually, a recent partnership through Postbeam has been really instrumental in helping myself and my clients, all of our founder-led profiles, be more active and engaging with other thought leaders. If you can be the first comment on a thought leader's post in your field, your industry, you're going to swoop up a bunch of free impressions, and that's really valuable. So you might think that commenting is wasted time, but it's actually really, really critical. Even if you aren't posting yourself on LinkedIn today, I'd encourage you to go and engage in those conversations.
Yeah, 100%. That I know like Gary Vaynerchuk talked about that $80 strategy of commenting and how powerful it is. I 100% agree. And and yeah, we're building more and more tools like that into Postbeam because we see and hear from our customers like, hey, this is a key part of my strategy. So um yeah.
And I want to give
Um,
a shout out to you guys for building that Slack feature specifically upon my request because it's been such a pain in my butt to go and Slack all of my clients every time a post goes live. And now it's going to be automated. I'm thrilled.
nice. I'm happy that you like that feature. But yeah, actually, good segue into this. We're going to open it up into open Q&A, but just quickly first, if anyone does want to try Postbeam, just as a thank you for joining us today, we're going to offer 50% off your first month. You just use code GROW50 at checkout, and then the code expires on Saturday. So we've never done this before, but it's one time only. Like we've never offered, something like this, 50% off. So yeah, if you want to give it a shot, just go to postbeam.ai and you can try it out. Just use this code at the checkout. Um, so yeah, let's maybe open it up. I know we're at the time here, but I'm sure people have some questions. So much great content we talked about. So if anyone has any questions, please drop it in the chat, and we'll try to get through as many as possible. Is it okay if we go? Let's just go for 7 more minutes here, if that's okay. Um, and yeah, I'll just open up the chat.
I'm curious, Manuela, if you have any pro engagement tips that you'd be willing to share,
Like to get more engagement on your posts.
or to how you approach engaging on others' posts.
Oh, engaging on others' posts. I set up the notifications. So I don't know if people in the audience have noticed there's like a bell icon next to people's photos on their LinkedIn profiles. So I do set those up for people that I want to like make sure I'm actively engaging with. um I think that's it. And then like actively, perhaps there's a couple of people that I find their content to be extremely valuable, so I actively check out their LinkedIn profiles once in a while and make sure to interact with their content. But yeah,
Nice.
I'd be interested in other more, I was gonna say automated ways to do this, but I do think like this is like a very personal thing too, right? Like making sure like your answers are not like AI generated answers and they're very like genuine. That's for sure something I try to do. So I'll share that as a tip as well. Like I never want people to think, oh, this person is just using AI to reply to my post because she wants impressions. Like I'd rather reply with some typos and grammatical errors than people think I'm using AI to reply to their posts.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
those are the
typos are.
worst though. The AI comments.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that just repeat what the post said. Yeah.
Yeah, you instantly know. Yeah, we're working on something there just to identify posts in Postbeam that you should maybe join the conversation in. So I'll let you know when that happens, and then you'll be able to notify your team in Slack, or your team will be notified in Slack when there's like a post that says like, oh, you've been mentioned, your brand's been mentioned, or um, It's like a thought leader who's talking about something interesting. So.
Emil asked about commenting strategies, and one that I've learned over the years that's been very helpful is think about like thought leaders in your space. So in, AI marketing or copywriting, in my case, brand strategy, identify those thought leaders and ideally people who have anywhere from like 50 to 300 reactions on a post on average. You don't want the post to be too big because then you probably, I mean, bigger, sure, but you're going to get buried in the comments. If it's not quite so engaged, people are more likely to interact with your comment. And then, yeah, to Manuela's point, just clicking that bell button so that you're notified anytime they publish a new post and can try to swoop in and be the first one.
Ryan asked another question here. What's a typical timeline if starting from zero to getting some people beyond your friends engaging on your content?
What do you think, Hillary? I guess you do this with clients.
It is tough because it varies so much. Like I have one client in the packaging industry and just there's no one, it's so dead compared to other industries. So getting engagement on his posts took a lot longer. We had to be a little creative and target people with aligned interests from other industries, whereas people in a really hot industry like I don't know, all these AI startups are much easier to scale that engagement quickly, but you kind of want to filter for the right kind of engagement, right? You don't want just a lot of noise. You want to see that people who are actually interested in this product are engaging. So
Yeah,
I
interesting.
generally say at least 3 to 6 months for any real reliable results from LinkedIn, because yes, we can produce content faster than ever, but it still takes time to build brand awareness and trust. But that's my ballpark estimate.
I think you make a great point on saying that not every industry is the same. Like some industries are like super active on LinkedIn. Like if you work in B2B marketing or AI, like you'll probably get a lot of engagement if you talk about things like how you use Claude or your AI workflows. Like I'm finding a lot of engagement in those types of posts, like even people that don't follow me, because maybe people are actively searching for like Claude workflows or Claude ideas, but there it must be very different in other industries that are not perhaps as tech savvy, or people are not using LinkedIn to find answers to their questions.
Mhm.
I saw an interesting perspective on this actually the other day, and someone was saying like if you're in an unsexy industry, you have the greatest advantage because you could be the first to
On
make it
LinkedIn. Yeah.
interesting on LinkedIn. Um, like I think of some channels that I follow on YouTube that are just for whatever reason, the format, they just came up with a really interesting way of talking about or presenting something that even I would have thought was boring before. Um, like that was, I think there's something there to just creating making it more interesting. And it could be text, it could be video, it could be, image and design. Um,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually a critical point. Figure out what your audience genuinely engages with. Like, obviously, video wins out over most other content forms, but I don't know, you might find that for your particular industry, a different format works better.
Yeah.
yeah, I think,
Um, Sorry, go ahead, Cassy.
I'll just say quickly, like when I see our client, like we have over 100 clients now that are using Postbeam that are so different. And the ones that are the most successful are the ones that aren't afraid to test and try everything. And it's kind of like any creative thing where you're trying to find your medium. You're an artist, right? Like content is writing or it's a form of art or it could be video or whatever, right? And I think the people that cast a really wide net and test so many different things are the ones that we see being the most successful. Um,
And there's some
Yeah.
logic to that just in terms of the LinkedIn algor or the social platforms reward the people who use the most features. If you're a power user, if you're actively engaged in every new feature that comes out, they're gonna privilege your content in some way.
yeah. Um, Manuel, do you have
Yeah,
any?
one last thing that I just thought about that we didn't touch on is the concept of sharing like vulnerable moments or learnings. I find that that type of content for both like myself and our founder tends to do very well because people are tired of like the AI generated content that perhaps is all about like how to do this in 3 steps, you know? But if you're genuinely sharing, like, hey, I made this mistake as a founder, or I made this mistake as a manager, and it's like actually personal experiences, I find that that tends to get a lot of engagement. And similarly to what I said before, if you're engaging with other people's content, you'll see those people start to engage with your content as well, hopefully. And I like to call them like LinkedIn friends. Like I have these like LinkedIn friends that we're always like interacting with each other's content, and it almost becomes like a nice support network.
I love the like the what you said about how you've created these basically super fans or super friend on LinkedIn, right? That's so powerful. Um, just really quick, last question here. Ryan asked, can Postbeam facilitate the post type of comment agent and I'll send you the guide, or is there a tool you recommend? Also, thoughts on this format. Super powerful format. We have customers that use Postbeam to do that. You can send messages directly to people that comment on a specific post, and you can queue that up. So if you have hundreds, then you can, yeah, anyone have thoughts on that format?
My social media strategist is trying to win me over to it. I don't like it, but that's more of a personal thing, though. I don't think it's a bad tactic. I think if you're trying to get leads, if you're trying to capture, yeah, the leads in that way, it makes total sense. For my own brand, I don't want people to feel like I'm tricking them for their information. I don't want people to feel like they have to jump through hoops to get value. I want to lay the cards on the table and see if they're interested, but that's just my preference.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of debate on this one. A lot of people saying like, why don't you just give out the value up front? Like if
Uh,
you have a right, if you have a guide, if you like just give the value up front and make people comment to get it. And then maybe those people will like your content so much, like whatever it is, your guide, your Notion workflow, that they'll reach out to you after, or they'll remember your brand when it's time to buy a product like yours. So I tend to lean towards that side of the debate, but I know it works really well for some people.
Mhm. And it's all engagement on that post. It's going to make that post more visible, right? So if visibility is your primary goal, then that's a great tactic. If, maybe brand trust or becoming irreplaceable, if they download that tool for free because they didn't have to comment on it and then they use it every day and you're top of mind and they're opening up that PDF and seeing your logo, that's really valuable too.
that's a great point. Well, I think we're at time. I know we went a little bit over, so thanks everybody for joining us, and thank you so much, Hillary and Manuela. If anyone is interested in following Manuela and Hillary just to learn more, they share so much great stuff on LinkedIn too. I just dropped both of their profiles. You can follow them on LinkedIn and learn from them all the time whenever they post about some of the things that they're doing to not just grow their LinkedIn, but also just marketing tips and tricks and things that they're working on. Anyway, thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, Manuel. Thanks, Hillary.
I
Thank you.
also learned a lot today. I'm going to put some of the things Hillary showed into practice and some of the
Likewise,
things you talked
Manuela.
about, Cassy. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.